Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Welcome to Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is a founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. With a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, he passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements and damages for his clients. I'm Evan Mack, and today's episode will look into accidents involving rental and moving trucks. Sagi, welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. Sagi, do accidents involving rental or moving vehicles like maybe a U-Haul or a Penske or maybe those Ryder trucks, do they happen often?
Yeah, it seems like they happen more often than not. And we got to take a look back. There's over 100,000 moving rental vehicles around the United States every single day. So what does that mean? You're having people who are not professional drivers start driving these moving trucks. Some of them are 26 feet. So think about like a big U-Haul or a Ryder or a Penske truck, and you see them driving. So a lot of crashes occur, and generally the spike occurs more on the weekends or at the end of the month when people are moving. You know, they got to move their homes or their apartments. That's when you see the spikes go up. So a lot of amateur type of drivers or drivers, I'll say like myself, I'm not a truck driver. I don't have a CDL and probably shouldn't be driving one of those trucks. It's a very dangerous thing to do.
But what makes these cases different from accidents involving maybe the commercial 18-wheeler or company-owned trucks?
So when you have a truck or a trucking company, they're using DOT-regulated drivers. So you have someone who has a commercial driver's license. The trucking company is regulated by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They have logging devices where you're driving and they know how long you're driving for. You're not supposed to drive over a certain amount of hours. They're taking care of the maintenance logs. They're checking around the trucks to make sure everything is intact before they get on the road. Whereas you have a rental car or a rental truck that, use the example of the 26 footers. And you have these people who are, again, we'll use them amateurs like myself. I can drive a car. I've done that my whole life or most of my life. And then you have getting into a big truck like that without the experience. You're not a professional driver. You don't know the regulations, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety regulations. Some people drive, we'll give you an example, from New York down to Miami.
Right.
And they try to do it without stopping. And, fatigue kicks in. Your perception reaction time reduces. And so that affects your driving ability. And then also keep in mind when you have these trucks on the road, you don't have the liability insurance that you would, or the different layers of insurance that a professional trucking company would have. So those are some of the key differences that you would see between an 18-wheeler and a rental car or rental truck.
In many cases, the driver is just like a regular person like you or I that's lacking the necessary experience to operate such a large vehicle. How does that lack of experience contribute to severe accidents?
Yeah, the lack of experience is huge. So especially when they're making poor judgment on turns, you don't know how big the truck is. Trucks don't turn as fast as cars, depending on the type of car you have. Some cars are better at turning than others, but
Right.
Trucks generally, you need to have a lot of distance, a lot of braking distance. In trucks, there are blind spots. Think about it. You're reversing a truck. You can't really see anything that's going on in the back. I have a case right now where I don't want to say the company name, but they're reversing their truck. They have their loader, the loader on the back of the truck down, and that loader, they're reversing while the loader is down. There's pedestrians, in the parking lot area, and they don't have a camera on the truck. I mean, this is what the rental truck companies are doing. So actually, in that case, they did have a camera, but the camera wasn't working.
Wow.
They didn't have the beeping sound as they're reversing, and you have an amateur driver running one of these major 26-foot trucks backing up, and of course, it smashes into an elderly lady. She breaks her leg, her hip, 20 days in the hospital as a result of it. And her life has completely and dramatically changed from what could have been just a simple camera, make sure the camera works,
Wow.
make sure that they have the beeping sound. I think we've all had the experience where you see either a garbage truck or one of these trucks, and they have the beeping sound to warn people that they're moving backwards. And on top of that, add to that case, they're in an area where trucks shouldn't have even been, which is not a loading area. So you don't have pedestrians expecting trucks to be there or back up. So really, it's lack of oversight, minimal, training on these vehicles that causes these crashes. And then you have people who panic in emergencies because they don't deal with these types of trucks and don't know how to maneuver them. You can also have a case where you have someone where it's overloaded the cargo or improperly loaded, so the truck sways on turns and could potentially overturn. I've seen those cases. We talked about blind spots and then braking distances. When you're used to, you can brake a lot faster at, let's say 30 or 40 miles an hour, where one of these big trucks, you can't. It's a lot harder. So again, I've had those situations where someone's driving one of these rental trucks and they misjudged the amount of time they had and they smashed into my client. So that could happen as well. So taking point here is, amateur drivers shouldn't be driving these trucks. You really should have a CDL. But, I don't make the law. We just enforce the law. So.
So, Sagi, what insurance is involved in the aftermath of a rental truck accident?
So when we deal with a rental truck, it's kind of like dealing with a rental car company. So there's something called the Graves Amendment. We start there, and then we're going to go. So the Graves Amendment was passed back when President George Bush, not the senior, but the younger one, was president. Congress passed the law, and it basically shields all these rental car and truck companies from liability, and basically all they have to pay is $10,000, unless the rider that rents the vehicle elects the option of purchasing additional insurance through the rental truck company, or their company has insurance. So let's give you a couple of scenarios. Let's say there's scenario A where you have John rents the truck. John doesn't have a company. He's just moving his family from New York to Miami. We'll use that example. And John doesn't buy the insurance, and the rental car or the rental truck company doesn't require John to buy insurance. So they'll get in the car and they get into a crash. John would be on the hook if he had his own insurance, car insurance. And we'll use Penske or U-Haul or Ryder in this case. If they rented the truck, they would only be on the hook for $10,000 under that Graves Amendment, which affects every, state in the United States. So that's one scenario. Another scenario would be where John is, again, moving his family, but decides to purchase the supplemental insurance through the trucking company, through U-Haul, Ryder, or Penske, or whatever company is doing the renting. And so they would have that option to purchase that supplemental insurance. So that supplemental insurance is usually $1 million worth of coverage, bodily injury coverage, which means it'll cover the bodily injuries caused to others from the driver of the truck's negligence. So that's another scenario. There are other scenarios. There's a couple more. Another scenario is, let's say you're at the trucking rental place and you have your Amex card. So sometimes Amex or these other companies, like some of these credit cards, if they're business cards or sometimes personal cards, they will provide another layer of insurance for the driver. So if you have a crash with a rental car company or a rental truck company, don't give up. There may be another layer to go after, and that's with the insurance that's provided through the credit card companies. So that's another option to do. And then the last option is, again, John is moving, but John works for a moving company and the moving company has insurance. Then you can go after the moving company's insurance and after John as well, if John was the cause of the crash. So there's different layers. And I've had, unfortunately, the experience of having all those situations. Wow. Sometimes when you have a really bad event and there's only $10,000 in insurance, and they didn't purchase other insurance, and there's no credit card to go after insurance, and there's no company to go after. It's just an individual. That happens, and it's unfortunate, and it's sad for the family. So if you can, for those people who are listening, get uninsured motorist coverage, and that'll protect you in case the person who causes the crash doesn't have enough insurance. Then you can go after that, your own insurance for the other person's negligence.
Is liability affected if the rental truck was being used for business purposes when the contract only allowed for personal use?
Yeah, so that's another problem we've had in cases in the past. I've been doing this now 25 plus years, going on 26.
Yeah.
So and this applies also in the regular car world, right? So you're driving your regular car, or it applies also in the trucking world too. So if you rent a truck, but you're saying it's for personal use, and you're starting to run a business out of it, the rental car insurance company can say, well, wait a minute, you told us this was for personal use. We didn't expect you to run this all the time. Let's say you're renting the truck for 30 days. We didn't expect you to run loads for other people, that you're shifting liability there. We didn't bargain for that. And so we're going to do we're voiding coverage. We're saying there is no coverage for this. They'll give you back your premiums, and then you're in a situation you don't have insurance. So if you're driving and it's for personal use, keep it for personal. If you're doing it for business, you need to let them know, otherwise they can void coverage. And that could trigger all types of exclusions in the insurance policy, because I doubt anyone who's going to get a car or get a truck, you're reading the insurance policy before you sign.
Right.
I've never had anyone. Have you ever done that? Have you ever read a policy before you get a rental car?
Well, my wife's pretty good at that kind of stuff. So, yes, so I'm sure she has browsed a few because we moved a lot over across, from West Coast and East Coast. So I'm sure she's browsed. But to answer your question, not me.
Yeah. Not me either. And I'm in this business. So, but yeah, I wouldn't be the one that would read it. I would just kind of know how they work at this point. So what I would say is, if you're a business and you're renting these trucks, you can open yourself to liability if you're just not disclosing that you're running it as a business, because the insurance company will say, not us, you didn't tell us this. So we're voiding coverage. And believe me, if an insurance company has a way of avoiding payment and not making payments, they're going to do it. They want to not pay claims. Obviously, if they have to pay claims, then you get a good lawyer to push them and make them pay. But if they can avoid it, they're going to find any reason not to pay.
But are rental truck companies like U-Haul or any of these companies, are they ever responsible when an accident happens?
So yes, so there are scenarios. It doesn't happen often. So let me give you a scenario where we have one right now where the rental truck company rents the truck to an individual that has, I want to say 11 moving violations in a 2-year span. And I don't even know how they have their license. But they give it to this dangerous driver, and some of them were DUIs in the past. I guess they're still being litigated, or the state hasn't had their trial or gotten a guilty plea yet, or whatever it's going to happen. But that's called what they call a negligent entrustment case, meaning I, the trucking company, negligently entrust my vehicle to you, a person who's had 11 violations, and you're still on the road. Well, what's going on here? Something's got to trigger a red alert. This could be a dangerous driver. There have been other cases where you have a driver coming in, and the driver is hammered, meaning they've been drinking, they're obviously visibly drunk, and then you still give them the keys to that dangerous piece of machinery. And some of them are over 10,000 pounds. Some of them are, under 26,000 pounds. That's like the magic number, 26,001 pounds. Then you need a CDL, meaning a commercial driver's license. If it's under that amount, you don't need a commercial driver's license. But think about someone who's drunk getting into one of those. It's dangerous if you get into a car, but let alone now you're getting into this piece of machinery and driving down the roadway. So there could be a situation where the rental car company is negligent for entrusting someone who should never have been driving. That will be an exclusion to the Graves Amendment. So if you have a Graves Amendment and the rental truck company is telling you, well, wait a minute, we're not responsible. You're not responsible if you give them the vehicle and they cause a crash, but you are responsible if you give someone who you knew or should have known should never have been given that truck. Example, like I said, the person with the multiple violations in the past, or the person who smells like a drunk and is drunk, and you're just giving them vehicles to a deadly weapon and they get on the road and cause a crash. So that's one scenario. Another scenario where you could have that is where someone doesn't have a valid license and they're still pushing out these rental trucks. That's another scenario. And then another scenario you could have is, imagine if there's a defect in one of these trucks. So you have a truck, we've had this scenario too, where they're driving down the road and the wheel flies off. And now the wheel flies off and the rental car company is saying, Graves Amendment, we're only responsible for 10. Well, that's not true. If it's a maintenance issue, they're responsible for more than just the $10,000. They'll be on the hook for giving the individual a vehicle or a truck that is not properly maintained. So that would be where they're on the hook as well.
So what happens if the driver who rented the truck wasn't the one who was driving during the crash?
Ooh, another scenario where I've unfortunately been dealt with that situation too. You see a lot of things in 26 years. So let's say John rents the vehicle and, his wife wants to drive the vehicle down. But John doesn't put his wife on that rental truck agreement. The insurance companies, you guessed it, they're going to say, not us. We didn't bargain for John's wife to drive. We bargained for John to drive. Had we known that John's wife was going to drive, we would have charged a higher premium, and therefore, you would have been able to drive. But since John is driving, it was supposed to be driving, and his wife drove, we're not going to provide any insurance coverage. So they can deny insurance coverage if that happens. So if you're having multiple people drive the truck, make sure to put them on the rental agreement. Otherwise, that'll void coverage, and good luck to try to get that enforced. It's hard to beat those stories. So those situations where you have someone else driving that is not on that insurance policy, that could cause you problems, especially if you caused the crash. Now the person who caused the crash is on the hook, and you, the individual who gave him that truck without, disclosing it to the trucking company, could also be on the hook too.
Do rental truck crashes usually involve more than one insurance company fighting over who pays? Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So absolutely, you're going to get a lot of finger pointing in these kind of cases. So what happens is the trucking company will say, not us, it's the driver. The driver's insurance company is primary, not us, the trucking company. So that happens a lot. And depending on how many layers of insurance there are, is there a renter's policy? Did they give them an option to rent? Is there a business policy? All these will, they'll require you to get a lawyer to really trace and figure out and read the language in the policies to determine who's primary, who's not. Every state is different on what they require. So reading the policies is extremely, extremely important. And then sometimes you have to litigate. So you have to go to trial on these cases or run it through the gamut of litigation to figure that out, because no one wants to take responsibility. So.
Awesome. Sagi, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents. If you've been injured in an accident with a rental or moving truck, visit shakedlaw.com to learn more about the Shaked Law Firm that can protect your rights. Don't forget to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you do not miss future episodes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.